Sup? Got a Twosun. So this is kind of an interesting, pardon me, interesting piece. This Twosun was sent to us by a friend of ours. And I use the word friend of ours, an old school kind of way. This is one of our people. I'm just going to call him C. C bought this piece from D-Win. And according to his note for me, he's kind of been on a Twosun tear. Bought two of these. I believe this is a ts409. Bought two of these, a plain one, and he said the plain one is awesome, but then this anodized one, it's got this wonderful purple crystallized pattern on here. But he said this one has horrible lock stick. So much so that he reached out to D-Win, and D-Win wanted to send a different knife and some other things. And he pressed D-Win to say, no, send me some parts, or we're going to have an issue. And so the parts, of course, took forever to show up, which they do, man. I mean, 4 to 6 weeks can be a long time waiting for a screw or a button and I've ordered parts from D-Win, and I've reached out to D-Win for parts on knives that had issues before. And they do take a while to come because, he doesn't send them like that day and they don't show up 3 days later. They show up, in that 4 to 6 week time frame. So anyways, C reached out to me and said, hey man, would you take a look at all this? And I said, I would love to, because I would love to, A, I would love to help, and B, let's all take a look at it at the same time. Now I can tell you that this action is bound badly, and the button's not engaging and locking. And so there's not a lot of, I'm not going to keep doing that, but there is most definitely not a lot of reason to keep functioning this action. We might as well get up in here and see what we can find. And so we're going to get after it, man. See, I appreciate you sending me this, and I am truly excited to see if I can help your piece here. See if I can help you. Yeah, it's ts409 M390 steel, and these Keanu knives are numbered. This is number 267, and this I will admit is the first one that I've handled with this crystallized anodizing on there. And man, is it cool. I mean, it's got texture. Interesting. And then the backspacer is gold in the same crystallized process. Very cool piece. All right, let's get in. I'm as interested as you all to see what's going on in here. I'm going to pull the pocket clip. We don't need it. We'll just get it out of our way. And I do have parts. I've got the parts that D-Win sent them, 2 buttons and 2 springs. And just so you know, I have gone to D-Win many times, considering I've bought hundreds and hundreds of knives through D-Win 99. And I have needed parts, mostly because I found an issue with the knife, but a couple of times because I've done something. And they have always come through, sent me parts, but they can take a minute to get there. So now here's an interesting thing. I took that screw out and the button has engaged, but it's not engaging properly. There's something going on in here. But it did engage now with the screws out, whereas it wouldn't engage before. It won't disengage. Like it's stuck. It's got issues. Yeah. There, it just engaged again. Ooh, is that bound up in there? I want to be careful because, of course, springs and parts can go flying. So I'm going to get my pry bar and see if I can't get this thing to come apart. Let's see what we got here. There it goes. Yeah, that's way too bound up for that to be correct. Something's not right there. It looks like the tension's off of the spring, so I'm going to move down here and see if I can't get this back to start to come free. There we go. I mean, right out of the gate, I'm a little concerned that all that anodizing is in these areas here where the button slides in and out. It just, I don't know, semi-problematic. The spring looks intact. The button looks intact to me. I'm not seeing anything there. I do see that there's a spacer missing here. Okay, so the spacer was against the blade versus down into the scale of the knife. Do you see that? So the bearing was down in this hole and the washer is in the blade. And so I could be wrong, but that may be the whole problem. It happens, man. Listen, this is DM here. So this needs to be here. Okay? It happens. I do it all the time. And then the other bearing on top here. And then the washer on top of it. And then the button, which I'm going to try to assemble that at the same time. It always tends to go a little better, like so. And then the spring. And then nice big hole, so it should be easy to get that spring lined up. There it is. Lots of tension on that spring. I will tell you that. I mean, a lot of tension. And the alignment between these back here and the pivot is so tight. Look at the blade already. Whoop, like glass. But we're not aligned here. So I think I'm going to have to pry up on the back a little bit. Let me get the blade out of there. I don't want the blade to get marred. We just have to live dangerously here. There we go. Yeah, see, so the spring has sprung. The button sprung. Let's try again. So the tolerance between these two holes right here and this hole for the pivot is very tight. And so coming down with this scale, there it is, I have to balance the front going down and the back at the same time. I think what I may do, I think I'm going to pull one of these. Let's see, the back one, maybe. I'm going to put the front on and get it down, and then I can screw these back ones to get them in. So yeah, I'm going to let those go down. I'm not going to worry about that. I'll get them in there. There we go. There. All right, so the front's down. I'm going to put the pivot screw in, and then we'll focus on the back. And the reason I'm okay with focusing on the back is because now I can turn these and try to get them to go through the scales. So I have the ability to put a screwdriver in here, and that turning it can help me get it to go through. I say that, and of course it doesn't want to go. Let me peek. Ooh, pulled it right out of there. Yeah, the tolerance from the front to the back is very minimalistic. I mean, it is super tight. And that probably has some to do with, I'm going to put a screw in this one right here to hold that in. And then I'm going to get this one. And I'm going to put the screw in that one too. Where'd it go? That's actually the screw for it. I think they're the same though. Well, I'm going to put this one and this one. Yeah, I can't reach. I'm not far enough in. I'm going to have to loosen the pivot. But before I do that, let's see what's up. Ooh, look how far that button's sticking out of there. I mean, it's completely functional now. And that thing's riding on glass. Ooh, does that thing run well. Yeah, wonderful. There is a case to be made to lighten up that button a little bit, but man, we'll deal with that later. All right, I've created a little bit of play there. Let's see if I can't get these in now. Try putting that screw in again. If you can't help me pull that through. Nope. If I can get one, I'll probably get the other. Yeah, man. The tolerance between these three holes is incredibly tight. If I can't create a little more play. There we go. I think maybe I felt that one move. We'll see. Man, that tolerance in there is so tight. It's not wanting, like when it lines up on one, it's not wanting to line up on anything else. Now I know it'll go because it was together, right? Like that's the state that I found it in. It was put together. So it will 100% go in there. Let me try it from the other side. Sometimes that helps. And like I say, if I can get one through, all right, well, hold on a second. Okay, let me get you back in here. So I just had to finagle the scales and work on it quite a bit. And of course, now that button's not working. It's doing exactly what it did. Well, there it goes. But it is locked up in there as tight as a drum. And let's see. All right, hold on again. Okay, so look here. So I've got it functioning perfect. Okay. And that's with the same spring and button and everything. The stuff that was sent is still there. Here's the problem, is this is not tight. And see the space here? Well, when I tighten this, it won't function because it changes the alignment of the button. The button is hanging up in that hole. So it's got alignment issues. Now, is it because of that anodizing in that hole? That's going to be my guess. Now, the question is, can I clean that out of there? I don't know. I'm going to see if I can. I'm going to see if that's something that I can manipulate to make this knife run, because it's an alignment thing. But once I tighten this, it won't work. And just to show it, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. So now this is tight. These scales are together. I don't even have this pocket clip screw in there. But just by tightening that, yeah, the knife starts to fail and the button's not functioning. It's because now that button is being pulled in some direction there. So I'm going to take it apart and I'll be back. Okay, before I went too deep, I wanted to see if I could notice any difference between the button that came out of the unit and the new button that's sent. And they look exactly the same to me. And then I wanted to look at the springs. So these are the new springs. They look exactly the same. The old spring looks to be sprung less, but it seems stiffer. This seems like it springs a little more. And they definitely look different. So I am going to change the button before I do anything else. And so I thought I brought you in. I'm going to use the button that D-Win sent him and see if that changes anything. Because, I think I can be smarter than the average bear. And then sure enough, that button is already very tight in that hole. And it's that anodizing. 100% it is. I'll be right back. Okay. So, a little finagling. I did use the original button. I did not use either of the new buttons. But I did swap out the spring. There's the original spring. And there's a spare. There it is. Here's the spare that came. So I swapped out the spring, and lo and behold, yeah, buddy. I think that the spring may be sprung a little too tight. Like I'm kind of curious to see if I could spring that a little lighter. And in order to get the wiggle out of this knife, I'm really tight on the pivot. Like I'd like to take some of the tension out of that. And I believe that this thing, it'll run much better if I could just get a little of that tension off of it. But now I got a wiggle. So, as that goes, it's a balance. The blade is almost perfectly centered. It's a little bit leaning towards the non-show side. And of course, I know that if I tighten that up, it'll pull that blade. I think that'll pull that. Yeah, it straightened it up. The problem is now I'm really tight. It's still pretty loose, but yeah, it's fairly tight in there. And so I think maybe one of the solutions would be to take a little tension out of that spring. So, the whole purpose of this was to tune it up. So I'm gonna lighten that spring a little bit. I've got a spare, so it doesn't bother me to mess with the spring a little bit. Let's do it. Okay. Well, I think we wrapped up. So a lot of work went into this, and I can tell you exactly what's going on with this piece. I would be very interested to find out if there are other owners of knives with this crystallized anodizing on it. The reason I say that is because 100% of the problems with this knife is this anodizing. It's this coating. It's in all the holes, and it's in the holes where the button goes. It's in the holes where the pivot pin goes. It's everywhere, and it changes the dimensions. So things just don't quite fit. And so I didn't use either of the buttons, and I didn't use either of the springs. I used the original button and the original stronger spring. So what did I do to this to get it to run really nice? What did I do? So what I did was I took my Dremel tool and a little bitty bit, and I went around the inside of these holes. All these holes, I went around them. And then I have a little wire brush bit that I went in there and I cleaned all that up after I went around in there. Same thing with the hole on the backside with the button that's in this scale. I just cleaned out some of that coating, that anodizing, because it's got texture, man. I can't explain it. I don't know what that is. Like, I think standard texture, um, or standard anodizing doesn't create this texture. I mean, I don't know. If you went with like a flat anodized coating, maybe it would. Um, but everything that was wrong with this knife was just the fitment of it. It just made everything so tight. As you can see, the blade's perfectly centered now. Everything was so tight that by the time I got it together, the button didn't have good alignment. There's no wiggle in this knife now. I put a weaker spring in it, and to be honest, I went back and changed it because I think in the end I like the stiffer spring better because it retains the blade on the closed position better and creates a little better detent on the bottom end. Man, does that thing ring out of there though with that strong spring. Hear it? Just ting. The weaker spring is an option. It had a tendency to bounce. I could push it down and it felt like it had a decent detent in it, but I like this one better. So I'd be curious to see comments below. Does anybody else have this crystallized anodizing? And if so, how's that knife running? Because at 100%, that's what was wrong with this piece. It was, we found the washer and I'm pretty sure that our man C had taken it apart and in frustration tried to make it work or whatever. But man, is this thing beautiful, right? Just gorgeous. Beautiful M390 blade. And I do like this coating. I mean, it's cool. It's slick. I'll tell you that. It's a slick coating, which in general I'm not a fan of, which is probably why I don't have any knives with this on there. If I was going to do it, this is a good one to do it because of all this milling. It creates a nice grip. I have this exact same knife, but I have it in the bead blasted titanium for that exact reason. But hey, see, I appreciate you sending this over, man. I am going to box this thing back up and get it right back to you. I actually got it today, and I just hate leaving stuff sitting around because, man, if I'd put this in a box and put it up in here, if you saw what was behind the peripheral here, you wouldn't want your stuff caught up in that either, man. I got so much stuff going on, but I'm glad I could get this thing running better and actually running really well. There, did you hear that ring? Ting. Yeah, pretty cool. Hey, a little note on these. Trying not to get oil up on this flat of the blade and anywhere near that button because that can create stick. Yeah, I don't want oil on that button at all. I want that metal to metal friction to smooth off. And so a little bit of stick initially, but when I have stick, one of the things I look for really quickly on a button lock is there oil up in here? On top of this blade, on the side of the blade. It's really important, in my opinion, to be very restrictive with lubrication on these so that it stays just in the bearings. Yep. But yeah, this thing, solid as a rock, man, and it runs really well now. So I appreciate you sending it. I am going to box it back up and send it back to you, man. Enjoy. I appreciate you, and I appreciate y'all watching. So a final quick update. If it was me, it'd drive me nuts. It's like, well, how did you do all that work? So this is what I used. I used my Dremel here, and it's got speed settings, so I'm able to really finely control what's going on. And then I used a bit like this to go in those holes and clean that anodizing out of those holes. And I did it in all the holes. I did it in the scale where the button goes. I did it in the scale where the button comes out the front, the show side, the back side where the button's recessed, and then I also did it where the tube spacer screws were. I cleaned all four of those holes out as well. And once I got that anodizing trimmed down, like I didn't enlarge the holes really, I just cleaned that anodizing out of there. Once I did that, everything went together correctly and the knife functioned. I was able to tighten the pivot, and I didn't have to over tighten it to get the wiggle out. And so the final action that you saw, this is what I did it with right here. And this is a big time afterthought. I just thought, if that was me, I'd want to know, well, bro, what did you do? Like, how'd you fix that? But 100% it was that anodizing, and I just needed to clean it out of the holes where everything was. Like I say, once I cleaned those holes up just the tiniest little bit, just got that anod, it didn't take much at this speed. I think right there. And I just right in that hole just a little bit, moved it around, each one of those holes, and then that knife went together properly, and it worked great. This is a piece that I got. It's a rechargeable piece that I got off of Amazon, and then a whole bit kit, and you can find in the description, you can find an Amazon link to this tool if you're interested. It was a budget-friendly piece. It's kind of bulky, but man, it works great for what I do with it, and a complete kit of bits. So anyways, that's what I used, y'all. Appreciate you watching.